Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's VIN-dow with Robert Hollinshead. Good mid or early October to you, Bob. The leaves changing down in the beautiful state of Pennsylvania because we're full foliage up here. So
Really, that's interesting. Not just the tulip poplars. They got dried out and they dropped their stuff, but oaks, maples, cherries, everything seems to be still beech, birch. They still seem to have all of the foliage. So it's probably the next couple of weeks. So
I was making a quick observation to you. I love bouncing what I see to see get your take on it. And one of them was every time we see an independent dealer who's been in the business for a little while, I'd say 12, 15, 20 months or so, they'll go get a floor plan, whether it's any of the big auction companies, in-house floor plans or somebody else, and then watch out during that auction because these guys go absolutely rampant. And you mentioned you had some comments about floor planning and some of the messes people can get into.
Well, I think it's appropriate for this time when actually money does matter and the cost of money really does matter at this point because we haven't been in that space for 5 or 6 years or 4 years, whatever it is. And a lot of guys that have only been in business 8 or 10 years, they haven't been through some of these ups and downs and market swings and insanity where you actually think you know what you're doing, but it has nothing to do with the fact that the market's nutty enough that your grandchildren can go out and do the same thing. And now all of a sudden we're back to a point where blocking and tackling, believe it or not, make a difference. You know what I'm saying? And one of those things, first I want to just say one thing. I was looking at something the other day, and they're saying there's, the guys that I don't even know people listen to this thing that we do all the time, Shawnee. And it's funny, but it seems like there's quite a few people to listen, and a couple guys, and I think they sound like new people. Were not laughing, they were making fun where they can't understand what we're saying. They can't follow our rambling nonsense, right? And I definitely understand that, and I agree with it 100%. You know what I mean? Because it's not like we sit and think about what we're talking about. This is strictly I would call it a VIN-dow into the insanity of what goes through our little pea brains as participants, skin in the game participants, not pontificators, do-shitters in the business that we're in. And if anybody has the inclination to listen to it, it's not like we think we know what we're talking about. We're just giving our own experience after selling 1 million cars or so that we've had and gone through all of the different variations of what's happened in the industry through our 50-something years of being hardworking slobs and, creating a few things, but in the meantime, just being a participant. So I feel the pain of what's good, bad, and indifferent with guys that may have the inclination to waste their time listening to this. So in this rambling, now back to the concept of what you brought up, Shawnee. As in the early days of floor plan, like auction-based floor plan, whether it was AFC or MAFs or whatever they called it, when Hockett first started AFC, and when the auctions, I'm guessing this is going into the mid '80s or something, when they started like extending guys a little bit of a floor plan. I remember distinctly, like the Brooklynites and the guys from Baltimore and Washington and coming out of Pittsburgh and so forth, that were in the lanes for a long time and really good at what they're doing. You actually understand cars and look at cars and paying attention. And when they started getting floor plans, I think what happens is it's natural, it's normal. You start going outside of your expertise or your niche in the market that you created when you're working your balls off using your own money. Maybe you got a little loan from somebody, but when you went backwards, like it was a sting. It wasn't just a noise. It wasn't a noise. It was a sting. And when you get that sting, it's a little different than a noise. You dig it? And I remember distinctly, not like I was asshole buddies with these guys, but guys I'm looking at, when you're on the block selling cars all day, you get to have like a certain rapport with these people. and you start to understand their modus operandi a little bit, and they started disappearing, right, one after the other. It was like weird to me, and basically, I think it had a whole lot to do with a guy working with $250,000. Somebody gives him another 250,000 or $500,000 to go buy cars with. You lose track of cars that get lost in a corner, cars that didn't start and you moved it over there. You didn't think about it no more. When it's your own candy, right? In other words, you're on top of every single car every single day, knowing exactly what's happening with those cars. And when you're not, because I got plenty of money in the bank, who cares about that car? I don't have to get out of bed early to go pick it up and drag it to the other place because of some reason, right? Or whatever. There's 84 million different variations of that. But when you start to lose track of that, and then you get clipped with a little bit of a market change. In those days, it was spring, it was fall, it was trucks, it was sports cars. But today, it's a little different. In other words, we don't have the direct, let's go. Oh, it's a spring market, it's a fall, it's a truck market, it's a north-south thing. It's not what happens here. Simulcast and online auctions have basically, I would say, eliminated the traditional market swings and things. And now what you got is, like a situation where money means something, brother. In other words, there's a couple different things about that, right? I was really lucky to grow up poorer than dirt. And, the couple of years I lived at home as a kid, my mother always said, when you make $1, you save 90 cents and you live on 10 cents. It was the greatest thing she ever told me. If I ever listened to her about anything, it's what I've done all my life. I never borrowed money from anybody for any reason, for one simple reason. You're not relegated to being an economic slave to someone. At the moment they give you the floor plan or whatever it is, you're really happy you got it. They looked at your financials and they say, yeah, you can become my slave. Yeah, you can go out and there's your 40 acres and a mule. You can go out and go plow fields, and we'll take maybe 30-40% of your net when it's done. Now, when you're doing your calculations with your own candy, the net really comes to a much closer number that's good for you. But when you're not counting the fee of the fees on top of the other fees, but don't forget there's fees, and don't forget, you've signed your life away on this, right? And then you got a market change. Now you can't sleep. This is a 2:00 in the morning thing, hunting for the cold side of the pillow. You dig it? In other words, where you don't have nobody to call. Your best friends for lives ain't going to be there holding your hand, trying to walk you through this particular instance. And the worst part of it is, I always associated floor plans and bank lines with drugs. Once you're on them, you ain't getting off them. I don't care what kind of rehab you're going to. That shit ain't going to do nothing for you because you already got that taste on the tip of your tongue. You follow me? I guess this ramble, right, turns out to be, and it's really difficult medicine to take. Rather than looking for new floor plans, I'd be looking for new ways to not need floor plans and maybe not live like you're a billionaire when you're making 200 or 300 grand a year. You follow me? And save the candy so you never put yourself in a position of being an economic slave. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, Shawnee, but I think if anybody was going to give any kind of experiential advice when it comes to, when I'm listening to guys, where do you get your money? How's the floor plans? Oh, their fees are crazy. Honestly, I would re-examine things like really careful with a microscopic nuclear microscope and start to figure out how you ain't going to need nobody's money, where you ain't never going to be told what to do and how to do it and when you do it and all these things, right? Because if you add that type of layer to what we do for a living, hunting and pecking and cheating and lying and stealing and finding and cleaning and fixing and dragging and then titling and so forth, and then maybe you found somebody you can make 3 cents on a car. Add on top of that, you're peeing in your underwear because you got somebody, your boss, your economic slave, the cat with the whip, because you capitulated to it. And I'm not criticizing somebody that needs it and uses it. My belief is, in other words, hold your breath, right? working a little bit harder. I know everybody's already working harder than they ever possibly could. Wife wants to leave because you didn't think anything. You're thinking about golf. Of course, if you're thinking about golf, you might as well give your license back because you ain't golfing and going to be in the used car business. It ain't. Those two things are mutually exclusive, unless you're like the luckiest guy in the world somehow or other. In a bad market, it ain't happening. It's buckled down. In other words, triple seatbelt time, in my estimation, and lock in. Not look for more to make sure that you're under the whip of the slave master, right? Lock in to where you're holding your breath to do business with less of somebody else's candy, and you eat your own candy. Use your own candy. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this ramble, and we'll see you next time.